Maybe next year you'll be invited. My sister laughed about the family reunion. I smiled and agreed. Next year, they'll also need a new co-signer for their house. Wonder who they'll ask. I, 34, male, have spent my adult life as my family's invisible safety net. The reliable guy who never asks for anything, but always gets called when bills need paying or crises need fixing. My family, parents Robert and Linda, early 60s, and golden child sister Stephanie, 37. Growing up middle class in Ohio, the favoritism was crystal clear from day one. Stephanie made cheerleading, front page family news. I won the state science fair twice? That's nice, honey. Immediate pivot to whatever boy Stephanie was dating. The pattern solidified in high school. Stephanie got a Honda Civic dad, lovingly restored for her 16th birthday. My 16th? A lecture about responsibility and a Goodwill bike. Her graduation party had 150 people and catering. Mine was pizza with family, and mom spent it on the phone with Stephanie about her college roommate drama. College was where things went nuclear. Stephanie needed the full college experience at an expensive private school. Cue the second mortgage. I went to state school on academic scholarships, worked 2 jobs, graduated debt-free with a computer science degree. Stephanie graduated with communications and $80,000 in loans that mysteriously became family debt because we all benefited from her education. Still trying to decode that logic. Post-college, I landed a tech job in Columbus, lived cheap, saved everything. Stephanie bounced between jobs, always seeking something more fulfilling or escaping toxic work environments. The first money request came when I was 23, $500 for car repairs so she could get to her new job. 11 years later, still waiting for that payback. But that $500 opened the floodgates. Suddenly, I became the family ATM. Stephanie's rent, credit cards, groceries, plus my parents' water heater, car repairs, property taxes. Every time it was a temporary loan, just until we get back on our feet. The paybacks never materialized, and asking meant guilt trips and drama, so I stopped asking. By 30, I was making $200,000 annually, thanks to startup stock options and freelance consulting. My family didn't know exact numbers, but they knew I was doing well. Well enough that when Stephanie announced her engagement to Derek, I somehow became wedding planner and banker. Venue deposit, catering, flowers, photographer, $45,000 total that they'd pay back once settled. Derek deserves special mention. He's perpetually launching the next big thing that'll make him rich. Insurance agency, cryptocurrency, day trading, MLM energy drinks. Zero actual profits, but he talks a great game, and Stephanie's smitten. Post-wedding, I was co-signing leases, paying deposits, covering monthly shortfalls when Derek's latest venture inevitably collapsed. It's clockwork now. Derek calls with sob stories about unpaid clients or failed investments, needing help just this one time. Welcome to my life as the family's permanent unpaid financial advisor / ATM / emotional support system. The invisible safety net that everyone counts on, but nobody really sees. The breaking point should have been when they decided to buy a house. They'd been renting for 3 years, had terrible credit, and Derek's employment history looked like a game of career hopscotch. No bank would touch them for a mortgage. That's when Mom called me with a favor to ask. "Bryce, honey, you know how much Stephanie and Derek want to start a family," she began, using that guilt-laden tone that had been perfected over decades of practice. They really need a stable place to raise children, but their credit isn't quite where it needs to be yet. I knew where this was going before she finished the sentence. They found this perfect house in Worthington. You know, good schools, safe neighborhood, but they need someone with good credit to co-sign the mortgage. Just temporarily, until Derek's new business takes off and they can refinance on their own. I should have said no. I should have hung up the phone. I should have learned from the decade of temporary loans that had never been repaid. Instead, I found myself at a mortgage broker's office 2 weeks later, signing papers that made me legally responsible for a $300,000 home loan. The house was nice. 4 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, big yard, attached garage. Everything a young couple could want. Stephanie cried when they handed her the keys, talking about how grateful she was and how this was going to change their lives. Derek shook my hand and promised this was the last time they'd ever need my help. That was 2 years ago. Since then, I've made the mortgage payment 7 times when Derek's income was temporarily interrupted. I've paid for a new roof when theirs leaked, replaced their HVAC system when it died during a heat wave, and covered property taxes twice when they forgot to save for them. All told, I've probably put another $30,000 into that house, on top of co-signing the original loan. But here's the thing. They've never once acknowledged what I've done for them. In their minds, I'm just the family member who has money. So of course I should help. It's not seen as a sacrifice or a favor. It's seen as my obligation. Like I owe them something for the privilege of being related to them. The family dynamics never changed either. At every gathering, Stephanie was still the star. Her job at the pharmaceutical company was so important. Her husband was so smart and ambitious. Their plans to start a family were so exciting. Meanwhile, I was still just Bryce, the computer guy who didn't have much to contribute to conversations about normal people things. I didn't date much, partly because I was always working, and partly because I'd been burned a few times by women who seemed more interested in my financial stability than in me as a person. My family saw this as proof that I was antisocial or too picky. Mom was constantly trying to set me up with daughters of her friends or coworkers, usually with the sales pitch that these women were looking for a stable, responsible man. Translation, they needed someone to pay their bills. The isolation got worse over time. Family dinners became exercises in listening to Stephanie and Derek's latest plans, while everyone ignored my attempts to contribute to conversations. Holiday celebrations were all about what Stephanie and Derek wanted to do. Birthday parties, anniversaries, special occasions. I was invited as an afterthought, expected to contribute financially, but not really welcome as an equal participant. I started declining invitations, claiming work obligations or other commitments. This led to lectures about family loyalty and responsibility, but it also meant less time listening to Derek explain his newest get-rich-quick scheme, or watching Stephanie get praised for accomplishments that I'd helped finance. The final straw started building 6 months ago, when I overheard a phone conversation between Mom and Stephanie. I'd come by to help Dad fix their garbage disposal. Another one of those casual expectations that I'd drop everything to help with household problems. I was in the kitchen working when Mom started talking to Stephanie in the living room, not realizing I could hear every word. "Bryce is getting weird," Mom was saying. "He barely comes around anymore, and when he does, he's so quiet. I'm worried he's becoming one of those bitter single men who just focuses on work." "He's always been antisocial," Stephanie replied. I could hear the dismissive tone even from the next room. "At least he's useful for helping with stuff. Did you see the new patio furniture Derek picked out? We're going to need Bryce to cover the gap until Derek's next commission check comes through." I stopped working and listened. "You should probably call him this week," Mom continued. "Make it sound like we really need his help, you know? He responds better when he thinks it's an emergency." My hands were shaking as I packed up my tools. I'd been played. For years, I'd been manipulated into thinking my family needed me, that I was helping them through temporary rough patches. In reality, I was just the family ATM, and they were discussing the best ways to manipulate me into making more withdrawals. I finished fixing the disposal in silence, told Dad it was working, and left without saying goodbye to Mom. I spent that entire evening sitting in my apartment, going through bank statements and calculating how much money I'd given my family over the years. The number was staggering, close to $200,000 in direct payments, co-signed loans, and covered expenses. $200,000, and they saw me as an antisocial obligation who existed to solve their financial problems. That's when I started making changes. Subtle ones at first. I stopped answering Derek's calls about mortgage payments. When Stephanie texted about needing help with groceries, I claimed to be busy with work. When Mom called about helping with their property taxes, I said I was traveling for business. The protests started immediately. How could I be so selfish? Didn't I understand that family helps family? What was wrong with me lately? But I held firm. I started saying no, and it felt liberating. Then came the family reunion. Every 3 years, my dad's side of the family holds a big reunion. It's usually about 50 to 60 people. Aunts, uncles, cousins, their kids. They rent out a pavilion at a state park. Everyone brings food. There are games and activities for the kids. It's actually pretty fun. Or it was when I was younger and didn't understand the family dynamics. I hadn't been to the last reunion because I'd been dealing with a major project at work, but I assumed I'd be invited to this one. 3 months before the event, I started hearing snippets of conversation about planning and preparation. Stephanie was on the organizing committee, Mom was coordinating food, Dad was handling logistics. 2 months before the reunion, I asked Mom when I should block out time for it. "Oh, honey," she said with that practiced, sympathetic look, "we weren't sure if you'd want to come. You've been so busy with work lately, and you know how these family things can be. Lots of kids running around, people asking personal questions about when you're going to settle down. We thought you might be more comfortable skipping this one." I stared at her. "You thought I'd be more comfortable being excluded?" "It's not excluded," she said quickly. "It's just, well, space is limited this year, and we had to make some tough decisions about who to invite. Space is limited? It's a public pavilion. Well, yes, but there are cost considerations too. Food, activities, decorations. Everyone who comes has to contribute, and we know money's been tight for you lately. Money's been tight. For me, the person who'd been subsidizing their lifestyle for over a decade. I almost laughed. How much is the contribution? I asked. It's $75 per person, she said, not meeting my eyes. Plus whatever you bring for the potluck. $75. I'd probably spent more than that on lunch that week, and they were concerned I couldn't afford to contribute to a family reunion. Who made the decision about who to invite? I asked. The organizing committee, she said. Stephanie, your Aunt Carol, Uncle Mike, and me. We tried to balance family participation with practical considerations. And the practical consideration was that I couldn't afford $75? She shifted uncomfortably. Bryce, you know that's not... It's just that you haven't seemed interested in family events lately. You thought wrong, I said. I'm interested. I'd like to come. Well, I'll have to check with the committee, she said. Maybe we can figure something out. Maybe. Maybe they could figure out how to include their own son and brother in a family reunion. That night, I called Stephanie directly. Mom says there might not be room for me at the reunion, I said, without preamble. Oh, Bryce, she sighed, like I was being difficult. You never come to family stuff anymore. We didn't think you'd want to come to this either. But you didn't ask. Come on, be honest. Would you have come? You hate those things. All those kids running around, Uncle Mike asking about your love life, the cousins talking about their jobs and mortgages. It's not really your scene. It's a family reunion, Stephanie. My scene is being part of the family. She laughed. Not a mean laugh, but the kind of dismissive chuckle you give to a child who said something naive. Bryce, you barely tolerate spending 2 hours at Christmas dinner. 3 days of camping with the whole extended family? Please. You'd be miserable, and you'd make everyone else miserable too. So, you decided for me? We made a practical decision. Space is limited, costs had to be controlled, and honestly, the family dynamics work better when it's just the social people. You know what I mean? I knew exactly what she meant. The family dynamics worked better when the antisocial ATM wasn't there to make anyone feel awkward about their constant financial requests. Maybe next year you'll be invited, she said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. Like she was doing me a favor by considering me for future inclusion. Once we see how this one goes, we might be able to work you in. Maybe next year. Like I was on a waiting list for my own family. I understand, I said calmly. Thanks for explaining. After I hung up, I sat in my apartment for a long time, thinking about that conversation. Thinking about the mortgage payments, the wedding costs, the countless emergencies I'd funded. Thinking about being described as someone who made family dynamics worse by existing. Then I started thinking about that mortgage I'd co-signed. The one that made me legally responsible for their housing costs. The one that showed up on my credit report as a major debt obligation. The one that had prevented me from buying my own house because my debt-to-income ratio was too high with their mortgage factored in. I pulled out my copy of the mortgage documents and read through them carefully. The loan was structured so that Stephanie and Derek were the primary borrowers. But I was equally liable for the full amount. If they defaulted, the bank could come after me for the entire balance. More importantly, I had the right to remove myself as co-signer if I provided 30 days written notice, and the primary borrowers could qualify for the loan on their own. They couldn't qualify on their own. That's why they'd needed me in the first place, and their financial situation had only gotten worse since then. Derek's latest business venture, some kind of online marketing consulting firm, was bringing in maybe $1,500 a month on a good month. Stephanie made decent money at her pharmaceutical job, but not enough to carry a $300,000 mortgage and their lifestyle expenses. Without my co-signature, they'd have maybe 30 days to either refinance the loan or sell the house. Given their credit and income situation, refinancing was impossible. They'd have to sell, probably at a loss since they'd only lived there 2 years and had barely made a dent in the principal. I spent the next week researching the legal implications and talking to a lawyer about the process. Everything was straightforward. I could remove myself from the loan with proper notice, and there was nothing Stephanie or Derek could do to stop me. The only question was timing. The family reunion was scheduled for the second weekend in August. I decided to send the co-signer removal notice on August 1st, right in the middle of their reunion planning activities. It seemed poetic somehow. They could discuss my exclusion from the family while dealing with the consequences of that exclusion. The letter was simple and professional. Dear Stephanie and Derek, this letter serves as my formal 30-day notice of intent to remove myself as co-signer on your mortgage loan number with First National Bank. As per the terms of the original loan agreement, this removal will be effective September 1st, 2023. You will need to contact First National Bank immediately to discuss your options for refinancing the loan without a co-signer or making arrangements for loan payoff. Please confirm receipt of this notice. Sincerely, Bryce. I sent copies to them, to the bank, and kept one for my records. Then I waited. The phone call started 3 hours later. Bryce, what the hell is this? Derek's voice was tight with panic. We just got your letter. You can't just remove yourself from the mortgage. We have a contract. The contract allows for co-signer removal with proper notice, I said calmly. I've provided proper notice. But why? What's this about? If this is about money, we can work something out. The marketing business is really starting to take off, and Stephanie's up for a promotion. We'll be able to make all the payments ourselves soon. When? Well, it's hard to say exactly, but probably within the next few months. Maybe by Christmas. Definitely by next summer. Derek, you've been telling me your business was about to take off for 2 years. In that time, I've made 7 mortgage payments for you, plus covered property taxes twice, and paid for a new roof and HVAC system. I'm done. Bryce, please. This is our home. We can't just lose our house because you're having some kind of midlife crisis. I'm not having a midlife crisis. I'm setting boundaries. What boundaries? We're family. Family that doesn't invite me to family reunions? There was silence on the other end. That's what this is about? The reunion? Bryce, that was just a space issue. We can still work something out if you really want to come. I don't want to come, Derek. I want you to understand that actions have consequences. You can't treat someone like they don't matter and then expect them to keep funding your lifestyle. We never said you don't matter. You're being ridiculous. Look, forget about the reunion. That was Stephanie's decision anyway. I'll talk to her. We'll figure it out. Just don't pull the co-signer thing. Please. The notice has been sent. You have 30 days to refinance or sell. I hung up. Quick pause, fellas. YouTube just dropped this new hype feature. If you're hooked on this story, smash that hype button. It tells YouTube this video deserves to blow up, and it keeps even crazier stories coming your way. Thanks so much for your support. All right, back to the drama. Stephanie called 20 minutes later, alternating between tears and anger. Bryce, you can't do this. This is our home. Derek's business is just starting to work, and I'm pregnant. That stopped me cold. You're pregnant? 8 weeks. We were going to announce it at the reunion. She was crying now, real tears. We've been trying for 2 years, and it finally happened. You can't take our house away from us when we're about to have a baby. I felt a stab of guilt, but pushed it aside. Congratulations on the pregnancy, Stephanie. But that doesn't change the situation. You have 30 days to figure out your housing situation. Bryce, please. I'm begging you. The reunion thing was stupid. I admit it. We should have invited you. We can fix that. But don't punish our unborn child because you're mad at us. I'm not punishing your child. I'm removing myself from a financial obligation that I should never have taken on in the first place. But where are we supposed to go? We can't afford rent on a place big enough for a family, and our credit is still bad. We'll end up in some terrible apartment in a bad neighborhood. You'll figure it out. You always do. How can you be so cold? This is your nephew or niece we're talking about. It's also my financial future. I've been carrying your expenses for over a decade, Stephanie. I've given up opportunities, delayed buying my own home, put my life on hold to fund yours. I'm done. She hung up on me. My parents called that evening, both of them on the line, voices carefully controlled. Bryce, Dad began. Stephanie told us about the letter. This seems pretty extreme, don't you think? Not really. I'm removing myself from a financial obligation. That's pretty normal. Son, we raised you to be better than this, Mom said, her voice thick with disappointment. Family doesn't abandon family when things get tough. You mean like how you abandoned me when I wasn't invited to the family reunion? That was different, Dad said quickly. That was just logistics. This is their home, their future. Stephanie's pregnant, Bryce. This is your family we're talking about. No, it's your family. I'm apparently just the outsider who pays for things. Bryce, honey, Mom's voice took on that manipulative tone I knew so well. You're being hurt and emotional right now. We understand that. But making financial decisions when you're upset isn't smart. Why don't you withdraw the letter, and we can all sit down and talk about this like adults? I've been talking to you like adults for 15 years, Mom. Every time you needed money. Every time Stephanie had an emergency. Every time Derek's business fell through. I talked, you took, and nothing ever changed. I'm done talking. So you're going to make your pregnant sister homeless out of spite? Dad's voice was getting harder now. I'm going to stop enabling your daughter's financial irresponsibility. There's a difference. Bryce, think about what you're doing, Mom pleaded. This isn't just about Stephanie and Derek. This affects the whole family. If they lose the house, they'll have to move in with us. Dad's back problems are getting worse, and we can't handle having a baby in the house. Please, just give them more time. How much more time? It's been 2 years, Mom. Derek's business isn't working. Stephanie's spending habits haven't changed. Their credit is still terrible. How much more time is supposed to fix problems they've had for their entire adult lives? Just until after the baby comes, she said desperately. Give them until after the baby comes to get back on their feet. And then what? When the baby's here and they need money for childcare, medical expenses, a bigger car, all the things that come with having a child? Do I keep the co-signature then too? Silence. This conversation is over, I said. The notice stands. The next 3 weeks were brutal. The calls came daily, sometimes multiple times a day. Stephanie crying about the stress of house hunting while pregnant. Derek alternating between anger and desperate bargaining. My parents trying different approaches. Guilt, manipulation, threats, promises. They tried involving other family members too. Aunt Carol called to lecture me about family loyalty. Uncle Mike left a voicemail about how disappointed he was in my selfishness. Cousin Jennifer sent a long email about how my actions were affecting the whole family's relationship dynamics. But here's the thing. None of them offered to help. None of them volunteered to co-sign a new loan or provide financial assistance to Stephanie and Derek. They were all very concerned about my moral obligations, but none of them seemed willing to take on any obligations themselves. The reunion happened without me, of course. I saw the pictures on Facebook. Everyone looking happy and relaxed, kids playing games, adults sitting around talking. Stephanie was there, showing off her tiny baby bump, accepting congratulations and sympathy for her housing situation. I wondered if anyone asked where I was. I wondered if they discussed my removal from the mortgage during their family bonding time. I wondered if any of them felt even a little bit guilty about excluding me and then expecting me to keep funding their lives. Probably not. On August 25th, with 6 days left before my co-signer removal became effective, Derek called with what he clearly thought was a brilliant solution. Bryce, I talked to a guy who knows about real estate, and he says we can probably get a private mortgage from an investor. The interest rate would be higher, but we could qualify without a co-signer. That sounds like a great solution, I said. The thing is, we need $15,000 up front for the loan fees and closing costs. I know that sounds like a lot, but it would solve everything. We could pay you back over the next year, and then you'd be completely off the hook for the house. I actually laughed out loud. Derek, you want me to give you $15,000 so you can get a loan to replace the loan I'm co-signed on? It's not giving, it's lending. And it's a solution that works for everyone. You get out of the mortgage obligation, we keep the house, everybody wins. Everybody except me, who'd be out another $15,000 that you'd never pay back. We would pay it back. This is different. How is it different? Because it would be a smaller amount, and my business is really picking up now, and Stephanie's promotion came through. We'd have the cash flow to handle it. Derek, if your cash flow had improved, you'd be able to make your mortgage payments without me covering them. Those were special circumstances. The business has seasonal fluctuations, and the answer is no. Bryce, please. Stephanie's stress levels are through the roof. The doctor says too much stress could affect the pregnancy. Do you really want to be responsible if something happens to your nephew? I'm not responsible for Stephanie's stress levels, Derek. You are. You're the one who's failed to provide stable housing for your pregnant wife. How can you say that? I've been busting my ass trying to build something. Just because it's taken longer than expected doesn't mean... It means you're not reliable, Derek. It means you make promises you can't keep and commitments you can't honor. It means I'm done trusting you with my financial security. He hung up on me. September 1st came and went quietly. I received a confirmation letter from the bank acknowledging my removal as co-signer. The mortgage was now solely Stephanie and Derek's responsibility. They stopped calling me after that. The family pressure continued for another week or two, but eventually that faded too. I think they realized I wasn't going to change my mind, and there was no point in continuing to waste energy on trying to manipulate me. I heard through mutual acquaintances that they were looking at smaller rental houses, trying to find something they could afford on their own. Stephanie had to give up some of the lifestyle elements she'd gotten used to. The nice neighborhood, the big yard, the attached garage. Reality was setting in. In October, I got a text from Mom. Stephanie and Derek found a rental. 3-bedroom house in Whitehall. Not the nicest area, but it's affordable and close to Stephanie's work. Baby is due in March. I didn't respond, but I was relieved they'd found something. Despite everything, I didn't actually want them to be homeless. In November, I bought my own house. With my improved debt-to-income ratio, I was able to get approved for a mortgage on a beautiful four-bedroom colonial in Upper Arlington. Nothing extravagant, but nice. Good neighborhood, great schools for the future, big backyard, two-car garage. Everything I'd wanted but couldn't afford while I was carrying Stephanie's mortgage. I posted a few pictures on social media after I moved in, just casual shots of my new home office and the backyard. The response was interesting. Lots of congratulations from work colleagues and friends, but complete silence from my family. At Christmas, I received a generic holiday card from my parents with a brief handwritten note. Hope you're well. Love, Mom and Dad. No invitation to Christmas dinner, no attempt to reconcile, just acknowledgement that I existed. Stephanie didn't send anything. I spent Christmas Day volunteering at a homeless shelter, serving meals and helping organize donations. It felt better than any family gathering I could remember, being around people who were genuinely grateful for help, who understood what it meant to struggle, who didn't take generosity for granted. In February, Mom called to tell me Stephanie had had the baby, a healthy boy they named Tyler. She sent me a picture via text, and I'll admit it hit me harder than I expected. He was tiny and perfect, and for a moment I felt a pang of regret about not being part of his life. But then I remembered all the years of being treated like a walking ATM, all the times my own needs and feelings had been dismissed, all the casual cruelty of being excluded from my own family while still being expected to fund their lifestyle. I sent back a brief congratulations and deleted the picture. 3 months later, in May, Derek called me for the first time since September. His voice was different, humbler, more defeated. Bryce, I know we haven't talked in a while, and I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I need to ask you something. I didn't say anything. The baby's been having some health issues. Nothing life-threatening, but expensive. Stephanie's on maternity leave, so money's really tight. We're behind on rent, and our landlord is starting to make noise about eviction. Still nothing from me. I'm not asking for a handout, he continued quickly. I know those days are over, but I was wondering, do you know anyone in real estate who might be hiring? I'm thinking about getting out of the consulting business, maybe getting a real job with steady income. I'd take anything, assistant, paperwork, whatever. I just need something reliable. This was the first time in 15 years that Derek had asked me for help finding work instead of asking for money. I might know someone, I said finally. Send me your resume and I'll see what I can do. Really? Bryce, thank you. I mean it. This could really turn things around for us. I did know someone, a colleague who'd started a property management company, was looking for someone to handle tenant relations and maintenance coordination. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was steady, and the pay was decent. Derek got the job. 3 weeks later, he called to thank me again and let me know he was doing well, that having a regular paycheck was helping them get caught up on expenses. I should have done this years ago, he admitted. All that time chasing big dreams when I should have been focusing on taking care of my family. I get it now. I hoped he did. 6 months later, Derek called again. This time, his voice had a confidence I'd never heard before. Bryce, I wanted to thank you, he said. And I wanted to apologize. For everything. The way we treated you, the money stuff, all of it. I've been doing some thinking, and I realize how unfair we were to you. Okay, I said, not sure where this was going. The thing is, having a real job, having to actually show up and be responsible every day, it's made me understand some things about myself, about how I was living before. I was basically a child, letting other people, you, handle the adult responsibilities while I played around with fantasy businesses. Derek, let me finish, please. I know I can't pay you back for everything. We calculated it out, and it's close to $200,000 over the years. That's insane, Bryce. I can't believe we took that much from you. Actually, it was closer to $250,000, but I didn't correct him. But I want to start paying you back anyway, he continued. Even if it takes 20 years. We're putting together a payment plan. Maybe $200 a month to start. More as we get our finances in order. It's not much, but it's something. Derek, you don't have to. Yes, I do. Because here's the thing I figured out. You weren't just giving us money all those years. You were giving us the chance to avoid growing up, to avoid taking responsibility for our choices. And that wasn't helping us in the long run. He paused. Stephanie's been doing some thinking too. She wants to call you, but she's scared. She knows she messed up, especially with the reunion thing. God, Bryce, I can't believe we excluded you from a family event and then expected you to keep paying our mortgage. That's so screwed up. Yeah, it was. Would you be open to talking to her? She's different now. Having Tyler, almost losing the house, it changed her perspective on things. She knows she took you for granted. I thought about it. Maybe, I said finally. But Derek? No more loans. No more financial help. That part is over permanently. I understand. And Bryce? Thank you. For everything. I know we didn't deserve it, but you kept us afloat for years. We wouldn't have made it without you. After we hung up, I sat in my home office, looking out at my backyard, thinking about the conversation. It was the first time Derek had ever acknowledged the full extent of what I'd done for them. The first time anyone in my family had recognized the sacrifices I'd made. It felt good. Not good enough to erase 15 years of being taken for granted, but good enough to crack open the door to the possibility of forgiveness someday. 2 weeks later, Stephanie called. Bryce? It's me. I recognized her voice, but it sounded different. Older, maybe, more tentative. Hi, Stephanie. I don't really know where to start. Derek said you two talked, and he told me what he said about paying you back and everything. I wanted to call and say, well, a lot of things. She took a breath. First, I'm sorry. For all of it. For taking your money. For taking you for granted. For treating you like you didn't matter. For the reunion thing especially. That was cruel, and I knew it was cruel when we decided it. But I told myself it was practical. That you wouldn't want to come anyway. Why didn't you want me there, Stephanie? Honestly. Because you made me feel guilty. Every time I saw you, I was reminded of how much you'd done for us, and how little we'd done for you. It was easier to exclude you than to face that reality. At least she was being honest. And I was jealous, she continued. Here you were, always having your life together, always being responsible, always being successful. And I was the older sister who couldn't keep a job, couldn't manage money, couldn't even afford to live without my little brother's help. It was embarrassing. So you decided the solution was to treat me worse? I decided the solution was to pretend it wasn't happening. To pretend we were equals, that you helping us was just normal family stuff and not something extraordinary. It was easier than admitting I was the screw-up. We talked for almost an hour. She told me about Tyler, about how being a mother had forced her to think about responsibility and priorities in ways she never had before. She talked about the stress of almost losing their housing, about Derek's transformation since getting a real job, about the budget they were living on now, and how different their lives looked. I want you to meet Tyler, she said toward the end of the conversation. When you're ready. No pressure and no agenda. Just, he's your nephew, and I think he should know his uncle. But only if you want to. I'd like that, I said, and meant it. And Bryce, Derek told you about the payment plan, right? We know it's not nearly enough, and it'll take forever, but we want to start somewhere. You don't have to do that, Stephanie. Yes, we do. Because Derek was right. You weren't just giving us money. You were enabling us to avoid growing up. And that needed to stop, for our sake as much as yours. After we hung up, I realized something had shifted. Not back to the old dynamic. That was gone forever. But towards something new. Something that might actually resemble a healthy family relationship. A month later, I met Tyler for the first time. He was 6 months old, chubby and alert, with Derek's dark hair and Stephanie's blue eyes. Stephanie and Derek had invited me to their rental house. Small but clean and comfortable. Nothing fancy, but clearly a home where a family was being raised. We had dinner together, and for the first time in years, I felt like I was actually part of a family gathering instead of being an outsider who happened to share DNA with these people. Stephanie asked about my work, seemed genuinely interested in my answers. Derek talked about his job, about learning to enjoy the stability of regular employment. They showed me Tyler's room, told me about his sleep schedule and feeding routine, included me in the mundane details that make up family life. When I left that night, Stephanie hugged me goodbye. Thank you for giving us another chance, she said. Thank you for becoming people worth giving a chance to, I replied. That was 8 months ago. Derek has been making his $200 monthly payments religiously. I've only received 2 so far, but they've both been on time and accompanied by brief notes updating me on their family's progress. Stephanie and I text occasionally now, usually sharing pictures of Tyler or updates on family news. She asks about my life too, and seems to actually listen to the answers. My parents called on my 35th birthday last month, the first time they'd acknowledged my birthday in 3 years. The conversation was awkward but civil, and Mom asked if I'd like to come to Christmas dinner this year. What about Stephanie and Derek? I asked. They'll be there too, if you're comfortable with that. I am. So this will be the first Christmas in 4 years that I'll spend with my family. I'm cautiously optimistic that it'll be different this time, that I'll be welcomed as a family member, rather than tolerated as an obligation. But if it's not, that's okay too. I've learned to be happy without their approval, to build a life based on my own values instead of their expectations. I've learned that sometimes the best thing you can do for people you love is to stop enabling their worst behaviors.